Good morning. Yesterday I was at the Motorcycle Live, and yeah, I thought I'd just talk about it. So I got a bunch of pictures and a bunch of what I thought and stuff like that of different bikes, and it's not just bikes there, which is a bit There always has been a bit of a bike-ish thing. So like, if you like this, you might like this sort of thing. But yeah, literally went around the show, had a good time, had a look at a load of bikes. A lot of nice shiny bikes, and oh, that's a nice Ducati. Oh, it's 20 grand. Okay, maybe I won't get that Ducati. So, okay, that's quite a bit of money. So there was quite a lot of nice things out there. For some reason, you could test drive an electric car if you wanted. It was like 20 grand, and I was like, okay, no. And then it's also 100 miles range or something. Probably like realistically 100-mile range, maybe. It's like, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. Not going to do that. Thank you very much. But there are the new bikes that are like not. There's no information about them, but they're just there. What craziness have designed this year? Well, the 990 RCR track. I was like, oh, that's a bit weird. It's got a fin. It's got like a wing on the back. KCM, not for me, but still like an interesting choice. Probably that's going to be about I reckon you need a chunk of change for that. There's a few electric enduro bikes out there with. They didn't have the price on there, but you see the usage time. It's like, yeah, 2 to 3 hours use. So let's say 2.5. Let's be reasonable and say like 2.5 hours of use, and that's like enduro. So it's like fast, slow. That's not like constant. And then it's like 8 hours charge time on a regular plug, or 1.5 hours on a quick charge. I'm like, well, or a quick charging thing. It's like, yeah, that's quite a lot actually. Like the electric trials bikes as well. It's like 4 grand. So I was like, oh, you can get a trials bike for a lot cheaper than that. Triumph have released their new their like enduro bike, and it's like, okay, it looks quite good. And then it's like, oh, 10 grand. I mean, it's just under 10 grand. And when the CRF 450 came out at 10 grand, the CRF 450, when that came out, that's an enduro bike. When that came out, that was 10 grand. It's like, well, that didn't do particularly well. So 10 grand for this one as well. But who knows? 10 grand's probably what I kind of like expected it to be, sort of like around that price. It's a shame, but yeah, it's very expensive nowadays, and that's not a lot of bike. I had to sit on them weird 3-wheeler things. I can't remember what they're called. Very weird position, quite comfortable. Definitely not for me. But yeah, I can see the appeal. I can definitely see the appeal. Then you've got the Fantics. Fantics had a lot of interesting, like, looking bikes. So they had, they've probably had one of the weirdest or best looking 125 sports bikes I've seen. And I was like, it's 125. It's like it's actually quite a nice looking bike. And I was like, oh, that's. Yeah, it's quite good. I was actually kind of shocked. But there are some weird things on Fantics that I noticed. Now I'm not sure. I know they're like Italian design. I'm not sure where they're made exactly. But it's just there was like some mismatching bolts and parts on them, and I was just like, I don't like. Okay, fine. I mean, maybe it's just me who noticed it, or maybe there was a mistake somewhere. Maybe. But it wasn't just Fantics, there were some other bikes as well, where it's like you're sitting on the handlebars and it's like, this side is bolts, this side is Allen keys. Why? Then they had them little weird electric moped thingies, so you could pedal them and stuff, and I was like, okay, you know what, that kind of makes sense. And then you saw the price, and I was like, I mean, 2 grand for this tiny little thing. If it was a grand, I'll be like, oh, that's actually not bad, because it looks like it's a bicycle. And I was like, you know what, it looks all right. I'm not going to complain too much about them, but there's nothing super special about them. But I was like, 2 grand for that? That's a lot of money for something that probably can only go 28 miles an hour, and probably not very far. But it's electric, got pedals, and yeah, I mean, I think that's good, and I think that's a good entry-level vehicle for, like, if you're 16 or something and you want to get a moped. That's exactly what you probably want to get, but not for 2 grand. That's crazy money. Now the new DRZ was there as well, and I thought that was really, really nice. The new DRZ was really looking good. A few changes are on it, I think. No space to put the kickstart, my friend pointed out. And I was like, oh yeah, true, you can't get the kickstart on there. The headlight's different, you know, some little modern designs. However, the seat height is around the same as the current DRZ. So I had the same issues getting on and off it. It was just out of my... The DRZ 400 is still, again, just out of my comfort range for sitting on it. I'm not the tallest person. Not got the longest inside leg. So it's just out of my comfort range, unfortunately. But I think that could be quite a good bike. I think it's going to be... I mean, it'd be nice to see it release at 6, but I think it's going to be close to 8 or 7.5 or something by the time it comes out. So we'll see what happens. But I liked it. I like the fact that it's got the dry sump still. You've got the dipstick in the usual spot. Handlebars are good. Like, everything just seems like it feels like a very solid bike. But what will it feel like to ride? We ain't there yet. You know, we ain't there. We don't know what it's going to feel like to ride. Is it going to be a bit more wimpy? You know, with all the Euro stuff, is it going to be suffocated a bit, sort of thing? And you know, it's had a massive legacy behind it because the old ones are kind of like indestructible, and this one, who knows? We'll have to wait and see. Wait until we get test rides on it. I mean, it all looks, you know, wait and see. Essentially, it'd be nice to see it do very well, and you know that's the sort of the DRZ 400 coming back. Honda, you're going to have to do something now because you've got the CRF 300, but then there's the DRZ 400. I can imagine a lot of people jumping ship to Suzuki soon. Or if you're getting new into looking at your first dirt bike, the DRZ 400 I reckon will basically take the market. My opinion anyway. I think the DRZ 400 will be taking the market over of that, and the CRF reign will not end but you know, have a bit more competition, because at the moment there's not really many bikes around that sort of like dual sports ruggedness, and the CRF 250 and the 300 are quite proven bikes in the rally. And then here's this DRZ 400 to shake things up a bit. And the other bike coming out this year, or coming soon, the BMW. The new BMW 450. So, you know, again, another mid-range, middleweight sort of adventure bike, slightly on the heavier side, whereas I think the DRZ and the CRF are around 150. This one comes in at 180. Or something, 183, but it's got a lot more power on it, so it's, you know, it's like, okay, that's actually quite nice, having a bit more power and all that. Looks very, very nice. I reckon it's going to be like 10 grand when it comes out, or something around that. I can't imagine it being cheap, it being BMW. It looks really, really nice aggressive stance and everything. I think it's possibly one of the, you know, I was like, that is actually really, really nice. One of the nicest BMWs that's been out for a long time. So the 310's going away. The 310 was a bit meh anyway. It needed spoked wheels and it had alloys and stuff like that. It's like, nah. But this one, I like the look of, and it's like, would I change it with my current BMW? That's what I always ask myself. Would I swap it with my 650 or something like that? Not really, because the 650 has a little bit more power, but not massively. We're talking like, you know, at 6. It's honestly, there's going to be no difference in power. Probably wouldn't be like noticeable. But the 650 I've kitted out. I've had it for what, 7 years, 8 years. I don't know, quite a while now. And it's about the same sort of power, and it's about the same sort of weight. Yes, my BMW is about 30 kilograms heavier, but you know, it's not to a point where it's worth me swapping that for another bike, essentially. But yeah, the BMW's 450, really nice, like mid-range trail bike. And then yeah, test rides. If you can do a test ride at the show, book in straight away. We went straight in there and booked in. And I booked in, and my mum, we booked in straight away, and the next slot available was like 120. It depends what bike you want to ride. I ended up riding a 500, and I was like, this is actually quite a nice bike, the CL 500 or the 500 CL. I was like, this is actually quite a really nice bike. Really easy to handle. It's a scrambler bike, and I was like, you know, it's quite a nice bit of power here. About, I think it's 47 brakes, so it's like that perfect A2 bike and everything. And I was like, it's quite a nice little bike. I cracked the throttle a few times to spin the wheel up. That's, you know, quite good. However, the ABS isn't switchable, and I was a bit annoyed by that. I was like, oh, I was like fighting the ABS to, you know, it's like I can't. I wanted to skid the bike a little bit, sort of thing, and it wouldn't let me do anything. It's just like wouldn't let me do it. It's just a shame. But yeah, I could imagine myself if I was like, oh, you know what? When a few more years later down the line, when these have become secondhand, or I need a new daily driver or something like that, I was like, you know what, the 500 is probably really, so it feels like a really comfortable daily driver. I reckon that'd be quite a nice, quite a nice commuter or something. It feels really comfortable, quite planted, and just seems to do kind of everything. Might be not particularly like the world on fire or anything, not particularly like crazy, but you could do some light trails with it. I would probably pull the fuse on the ABS or something, but yeah, that'd be quite a nice little bike to own. Maybe later on. They're not too bad second-hand prices around the moment, for 4 or 5 grand. So I was like, oh, you know, it got me looking. But then again, I do like my Hondas. So yeah, went over to CCM. They had some new crazy custom bikes there they were doing. You know, they're show bikes. They have that quick inner rider experience. Me and my mates gave it a go. Quite hard. You have to get at least 30. I think you got 30 seconds to hit as many times as you can on the button, and some people had hit it 40 times. Or no, you got 20 seconds. It's like you'd have to be hitting a button, 2 buttons a second or something to beat the score. It's like, yeah, no, it's a lot harder than you think. You maybe give it a try. It's like, oh, I'm toast on that. After test ride, went over to Honda, had a look at their little bikes, just seeing what they had new. Nothing really, you know, stood out to me crazy. But then I was looking at, you know, the nice EVs I hadn't really seen. I was like, okay, oh, that's nice. Oh, you know, could be quite good. Nice little EV scooter. You know, how much is it? Oh, okay, a bit on the pricey side, just under 4 grand or whatever it is. Oh, you know, what's the range? Oh, 25-mile range. That's not particularly great. I think you'd be charging it every day or every 2 days, depending on how far you had to go to work. If you're commuting 10 miles, you know, 10 miles a day, say, that's every 2 days you need to charge it. But yeah, I was like, well, that's quite expensive, you know, that's quite dear. Where you can get a scooter for around 2 to 3 grand, which is a 125cc, and that will do probably like 160 mpg nowadays, and then you've saved yourself like a good grand plus. But unfortunately, that's the way it's going. So in conclusion, there's a lot of Chinese manufacturers there, or Chinese bikes out there, coming in at decent prices. As you know, so that's a decent price for a brand new big bike. Okay, yeah, that's good. Shame these, you know, unfortunately you can't get them anymore on the other manufacturers. And I think them Chinese bikes are pretty reliable now, or they're getting better. They're not getting any worse, but they're getting better. The only downside with the Chinese bikes at the moment is getting parts of them. Sometimes it can be a bit of a pain. I've had a couple of instances where certain parts are unobtainable for bikes that are only a couple of years old. For instance, couldn't find a key set for a bike, discontinued, and that was a Lexmoto, discontinued, couldn't get any parts for that. Someone else I know couldn't find a front disc. They had a scooter that they got for 300 quid, Chinese thing, not very old, maybe I think it was going in for its first MOT, and the front disc was a bit too thin or very worn or something, so it was on the way out. It's like, oh, get a new disc. Couldn't get a new disc. Couldn't get a new front disc for it, so he ended up just getting the bike for scrap, because to get a disc made up was like, it was like 100 quid just to get a disc made up, and it's like, you know what, it's not, he can't be bothered with it, and he just ended up selling it for scrap or something, so, or selling it for parts. which is a shame because I think the bike seemed to be quite reliable, and I think they are getting better, and their stuff is so cheap and it's looking really good. You know, when it's brand new and everything, it looks really good. I mean, it'd be interesting to see how they look after a few years. Like there's the Cove 450 Rally and all this stuff, and it's like, oh, it looks really, really nice. And yeah, just I would always go with a slightly, you know, if you can afford it, then go with a slightly better brand. But if you're new into biking, then these Chinese bikes are very, very attractive to someone. So yeah, I think a lot of people will be buying them in the future years to come. I did like the look of the BMW. I did like the look of the DRZ. I think they are definitely going to maybe make Honda come up with a CRF 400, which would be, you know, directly competition to put into that mix. That'd be nice to see. And I don't like the look of any of these electric bikes. I like the look of them. I like the look of Zero's electric adventure bike and everything. I thought that was really nice. But not the price point of 16 grand, and not going to do about 100 miles on a charge. 100 miles, it could do 150. But let's say realistically, you're looking at like maybe around 100 sort of thing, especially if you want to keep it lit. And then the fact that you have to stop for an hour to charge on a quick charger, just over an hour on a quick charger. Yeah, so I don't like where it's going, all these EV bikes. And unfortunately, that's kind of where it is heading. So buy a petrol bike now while you still can. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, whatever, like, comment, whatever. Catch you in the next one. Bye.